2, 3, go.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. God willing, we will be starting our Quran study today from chapter 40, Forgiver or Al Ghafir, and the verse 28. And we always start the recitation of Quran by seeking refuge in God. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. The subtitle of verse 28 is God guides not the liars. A believing man among Pharaoh's people who was concealing his belief said, "How can you kill a man just for saying, 'My Lord is God,' and he has shown you clear proofs from your Lord? If he is a liar, that is his problem. And if he is truthful, you benefit from this, his promises. Surely God does not guide any transgressor, liar. O my people, today you have kingship and the upper hand, but who will help us against God's judgment should it come to us?" Pharaoh said, "You are to follow only what I see fit. I will guide you only in the right path." So this is the continuation of the story of Moses. When Moses was summoned in Pharaoh's, Moses was giving Pharaoh message of God, and they were having some conversation. So at that time, if one of Pharaoh's people, who was hiding his belief, because obviously Pharaoh was a tyrant and an oppressor, and he possessed a lot of power and wealth, and he had slaves, so people would not ever dare to go or say anything against him or his beliefs. Um, so he talked about he said, "How can you kill a man just for saying, 'My Lord is God,' and he has shown you clear proofs from your Lord? If he is a liar, that is his problem. And if he is truthful, you benefit from his promises. Surely God does not guide any transgressor, liar." So obviously, they were planning to kill Moses for saying, God is his only Lord, and he was advocating worshiping of God alone, and which was not liked by Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh thought he is God. God is an entity, of course, as we know, which possesses powers, and being a God gives you unlimited powers. But as we know, there is only one God, meaning there is only one entity who possesses absolute power over everything. But not a lot of humans can capture that, or they perceive it. A lot of people give themselves credit for doing things, and obviously Pharaoh was one of those people who had a lot of power. So in his mind, he was a god. Um, so this person dared to say something in defense of Moses, that if he's lying, that's his problem. But just imagine if he's telling the truth, and how could he go wrong while he's just proclaiming, "My Lord is God," and he has shown you clear proofs. The problem is, whenever a messenger or a prophet comes, they are always supported with clear proofs, meaning, like, in different words, we can say it, miracles, scientific proofs, or anything that could not be done normally by any human being. They present a phenomenon which is like beyond human capacity or power. So even then, people when people are blinded with their own ego, they cannot see and believe in any proof, no matter what you show them. So this guy is questioning the intelligence of people and saying, like, Why would you kill somebody for just saying that? And if he's telling the truth, we all can benefit from this. And if he's a liar, that's his problem. So if only people would do that, but that doesn't happen. People do not like the truth. And what God says, God never guides the liars. Liars are always deceiving themselves. They stay away from the truth. They ego tells you to lie, to be something or say something which is against the truth, to gain certain value at people, or we lie if something we can get benefit from saying something even though it is not the truth. So why would God never uh, guides the liars? Because they're deceiving themselves first of all before they could deceive anybody else. So God guides those who seek the truth, and truth is all what God. Everything about God is the ultimate truth. O my people, today you have kingship and the upper hand, but who will help us against God's judgment should it come to us? Pharaoh said, you are to follow only what I see fit. I will guide you only in the right path. So Pharaoh thinking he's the God. Um, he is, of course, telling his people that he will guide them in the right path. You are to follow only what I see fit, you know. He cannot imagine anybody going against him, and that whatever he's doing he's right, and he has the right. But the earlier in this line, "O my people, today you have kingship and the upper hand, but who will help us against God's judgment should it come to us?" This is the continuation of the same dialogue this person is saying. So obviously, he was a believer inside, and he thought about, like, maybe these guys. The believer is the one who will also believe in the hereafter. So no matter what kind of might somebody has today, power, empires, overwhelming wealth, but one day they leave everything behind and they go to God with nothing except their deeds. So this person has the vision, and he can see that who will help us against God's judgment? Nobody. So obviously, uh, he could see the truth in the message and believed, but Pharaoh was not accepting it, and he say, "You gonna do what I say, and I say see whatever is right for me. That is what you are going to follow." The one who believed said, "O my people, I fear for you the same fate as the previous opponents, the opponents of Noah and Ad Thamud, and others who came after them. God does not wish any injustice for the people." So, same person who heard the message and believed in it must have had seen the previous history or read these previous scriptures of God. And in that, what we see in the previous history is the fate of those who did not believe in the message. And then what happened to them? There is retribution. There is, when we go against God's laws and God's system, and we reject messengers and prophets and the truth which come to us, the consequences are not good. So the history is full of those consequences. So this person is afraid, and he's telling people that, this can happen to you. Um, then he continues, "O my people, I fear for you the day of summoning. That is the day when you may wish to turn around and flee, but nothing will protect you then from God. Whomever God sends astray, nothing can guide him." So he continued that, "O my people," so this This is a sign that once Moses gave the message, and this one person like became immediately a believer, and he's talking about previous history, talking about the consequences of rejecting God's message and messengers. And he talks about day of summoning, when everybody will be summoned at God. One of the names of, the day of summoning, the day of resurrection, and so it's about the day of judgment, the day when everybody is resurrected. We will be summoned to God. So he's talking about the hereafter. Like, forget about this life. No matter what you see, Pharaoh has so much strength and power and wealth. But I fear for you the day of summoning. That is more important than this life, and the vanities and everything. So he seems like he became, first from the one of the first ones who believed, and his heart was full of belief at that time. And he talks about that day that is not a good day, uh, when you may wish to turn around and flee, but nothing will protect you then from God. Like, no matter how afraid you are of Pharaoh right now, what about that day when you're facing the eternity, and nothing can protect you then from God? And that will include everybody and anybody. And whomever God sends astray, nothing can guide him. So if you don't believe, then God can send, when we choose not to believe, then God can send people astray, meaning they choose to go astray, then God will let them, and then when God lets them, nothing can guide them, because then God augments whatever they believed in. If we choose the right path, God will augment our faith. We choose to live a righteous life, God will show us the way. It's all about our choices and our free will. Who is the last messenger? A tragic human trait. Verse 34. Joseph had come to you before that with clear revelations, but you continued to doubt his message. Then, when he died, you said, God will not send any other messenger after him. He was the last messenger. God thus sends astray those who are transgressors, doubtful. So the footnote of this verse 34 says, the Jews refused to refused to believe in the Messiah when he came to them. The Christians refused to believe in Muhammad when he came to them. And a majority of today's Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last messenger. On that erroneous basis, they refused to accept God's messenger of the covenant. We learn from 381 and 33:7 that those who fail to accept the Quranic um, injunctions to and believe in and support God's messenger of the covenant are no longer believers. See Appendices 2 and 26 of the Authorized English Version of the Quran, the Final Testament. So this is a fact, and it's a tragic human trait every time. This is we see in the history of religion, and we see through the Quran. When the Quran has the most accurate history described in it of previous generations, and we find one common denominator is that every time a messenger comes, people reject the messenger, and they believe, like the example given here is that when Joseph came, um, after Joseph, the believers thought, uh, people thought no other messenger will come, and then when Jesus came, Jesus, even though he was prophesied, they refused to accept him as the Messiah, even though all previous books, previous scriptures identified that the Messiah will be coming, and they rejected that, and they killed him. So this is throughout the history. Now, same thing with Prophet Muhammad. People think he's the last messenger, But as we know through the Quran, that Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet, but it did not mention anywhere in the Quran that he was also the last messenger. So we know the Quran is the last book of God, and God is protecting this book by a superhuman phenomena, which is a mathematical miracle of the Quran, um, that no falsehood could enter it. It's protected um, by this phenomenon. And we know that Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet because this is the end of the message. The message has been restored and completed with the advent of Quran. It's the most important book um, to humankind. It's a gift of God, and it will not change until the end of times. It will be protected by God's grace with His system, and it has, you know, every word in it from God. So the messengers, um, God even tells us in the Quran, the messengers you know, and messengers you don't know. And the messenger of the covenant has been mentioned in the Quran and also in the Bible. Um, so this prophecy has been fulfilled, but unfortunately, same history is being repeated again. That people think Prophet Muhammad was the last messenger as well, although Quran never mentions that. So that is the tragedy, and that is the history of humankind. It happens every time. So God will not. Those who are doubtful about, you know, God's messages, God will send them astray. You know, that's the consequence. We choose, and then consequences come after accordingly. Verse 35, they argue against God's revelations without any basis. This is a trait that is most abhorred by God and by those who believe. God thus seals the hearts of every arrogant tyrant. It's also human ego that they are, when they see God's revelations, they don't get it. Their ego tells them otherwise. Most of the time, people are so stuck in their previous traditions that that's what they see is the truth. And truth is right in front of their face and their eyes, and they reject it because it shakes them up. It questions them that what we were doing all this time were wrong. What about our, forefathers and all that? Everybody was wrong. The ego tells you all the time. It's in human nature. They never want to see themselves wrong about anything. When we question somebody's, if somebody's doing something wrong and we question them, it hurts people. It hurts their ego. The same thing when the truth comes from God and it's new and it tells you what you have been doing was wrong, people go against it. And God said, this is when you argue against God's revelations and you say, no, 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 you're wrong. This can't be. You cannot worship God alone. That is not our religion. What about, you know, what about these prophets, who, as we all know, we humans worship other entities beside God. That's the majority comes under that category. And that's by definition, it is idol worship. So people cannot take the truth to worship God alone. And they argue and they argue and they argue, without any proof and without any enlightening scripture, they do that because their ego has believed that way. And God does not like such traits, and God abhors it. God hates it. And by those who believe, believers also, they would not be, they cannot stand such arguments. It hurts them. We are here to support God, support the truth. We are here to purify our souls. And when we see such argumentative people, it doesn't feel good. You feel uh, repulsed by such actions. So what is the consequence, to those who argument, or they argue against God's revelations? God says, God that seals the hearts of every arrogant tyrant. It's your ego, it's your arrogance which refuses to accept that truth. Truth hurts. So we continue about the story of Pharaoh or Moses here. Number 36. Pharaoh said, O Haman, build for me a high tower, that I may reach out and discover. I want to reach the heaven and take a look at the God of Moses. I believe he is a liar. Thus were the evil works of Pharaoh adorned in his eyes, and thus was he kept from following the right path. Pharaoh's scheming was truly evil. So, what did Pharaoh say after he received this information? How he argues now? He's being sarcastic, or is he being real? Not sure. But he says, "Oh Haman, one of his, generals or commanders, build for me a high tower that I may reach out and discover." So he knows that there's what Moses is pointing out is that a God high above. He is so arrogant, and he thinks he has access to everything. He's so powerful that he can build such a high tower to go and actually see God. He's talking about, because Moses has given him the message about heaven and God being high above in the heaven. He wants to get to the heaven and take a look at the God of Moses. And he says, I believe he's a liar. Thus were the evil works. So if this is your reaction after receiving the message about God, then you can imagine how far astray was Pharaoh gone. He was just totally full of himself, and his ego was provoking him that you are the God. You can even build a tower high enough to go to heaven. This is extreme, right? So this is so dangerous. When we worship our ego, then we are blinded. We will never be able to see the truth. Thus were the evil works of Pharaoh adorned in his eyes. And God lets people believe, what they want to believe, what they want to see. They will be lost in their own imagination or belief. It will be like look beautiful to them. It will be adorned in people's eyes. This is God's system, and God's system is irrefutable. And thus was he kept from following the right path. Pharaoh's scheming was truly evil. Obviously, when ego provokes people to go against God and challenge God's revelations, that is evil. It is dark. You're following a wrong path, and you're believing in it, and you're sticking to it. And we know that the alternative is the devil. Either when message comes to people, they have the choice. They choose God, or they can choose the other alternative, which is the devil. Verse 38. The one who believed said, O my people, follow me, and I will guide you in the right way. O my people, this first life is a temporary illusion, while the hereafter is the eternal abode. So, the same person, we talked about him before, uh, he became the believer, and he's trying to convince people, maybe they could listen to him. And he says, follow me, and I will guide you in the right way. And he talks about he's already a believer in the hereafter, and he's very convinced that this life is a temporary illusion, while the hereafter is the eternal abode. So all messengers, all prophets bring one message. Its message has been the same. Different times, different people, different enemies of God, but the same consequences. Some will reject the message, very few will accept it. So the message is about worshiping God alone and believing in the hereafter and being accountable for what we do in this life. And if we think about the hereafter, life changes, everything changes. We see this world as an illusion as God describes it. Illusion is not a substitute for reality. The eternal life is forever. And this what we see is here in an illusion compared to that life. Absolutely. God has said it over and over. The best deals, the best deal, verse 40. Whoever commits a sin is requited for just that, and whoever works righteousness, male or female, while believing, these will enter paradise, wherein they receive provisions without any limits. Subhanallah, what is the best deal? God tells us. It's not that you invested in Apple's stock when it was $6 or Microsoft, or you earned a lot of money, or you hoarded a lot of gold and silver and built empires. What is the best deal? God says, whoever commits a sin is requited for just that, and whoever works righteousness, male or female, while believing, these will enter paradise, wherein they receive provisions without any limits. So you know what? In this life, there is a limit to everything. There is a limit to how much you can earn. There is a limit to how healthy you can stay, or how many years you live, or how much you can eat actually. No matter how much money you have, there is a limit to what your stomach can take. There is a limit to what you can spend. But what God says, the best deal is in the hereafter, if you believe, male or female, live a righteous life, the paradise, you enter paradise wherein there you receive provision without any limits. Just you imagine anything and that can happen. We cannot do that here on this earth. There is no limit to provisions there, and the kind of provision and how much you can have. What is the best deal then? Verse 41, and subtitle is The Believing Egyptian Debates with His People. It continues again. So this same believer, the Egyptian believer who's talking with so much conviction, and this is to his fellow Egyptian people. Oh my people, while I invite you to be saved, you invite me to the hellfire. You invite me to be unappreciative of God and to set up beside Him idols that that I do not recognize. I am inviting you to the Almighty, the Forgiver. So he's debating and trying to convince people that, literally he's sort of begging them, I invite you to be saved. You invite me to the hellfire. So you can see how clear he is about the hereafter. Hereafter is a big factor, which makes you a believer or just, lip service. That's the difference. And he's saying, like, you invite me to be unappreciative of God. If we reject God's message and His revelations when it comes to us, we become unappreciative of God's mercy. It's God's mercy that He sends His messengers to us. with good news and with bad news, that if we don't follow, what are we going to face then? And the good news, if we do follow, um, we accept God's message, what is there then? Nothing but goodness. So we have to be so appreciative of whatever God has bestowed upon us in this life. Is also all the good is from God. And then God wants us to have more good stuff in eternity. And how unappreciative we are. Human being rejects God's message. They don't see that all the good stuff is from God. Human being is argumentative and unappreciative of God's blessings. Satan was the first unappreciative creature during the great feud. And to set up beside him idols that I do not recognize. I am inviting you to the Almighty, the Forgiver. We must worship God alone. We have to reject all idols besides him, like meaning we cannot give power to anybody other than God to harm us or benefit us. All power belongs to God. So setting up any idols, meaning giving power to any saint or prophet or dead people or alive people or anyone, your boss, your children, your money, is setting up idols beside God. So as we know, as believers believe that there is no other God beside God, meaning there is no other entity who holds any kind of power or any kind of share in the heavens and the earth. And he continues, I'm inviting you to the Almighty, the Forgiver. God will forgive us our sins. He's so merciful, and the name of this surah is the Forgiver. Subhanallah. And all of this history is being told to us that He is the most merciful God, and we should learn from the history and stick to the right path. Never set up idols beside God. So then our sins will be forgiven. There is no doubt that what you invite me to do has no basis in this world, nor in the hereafter, that our ultimate return is to God, and that the transgressors have incurred the hellfire. So, thinking that Pharaoh can be a god, actually, he completely disbelieves in that and has no basis. He believes it has no basis. He's just a human being like other people, happens to be inheriting a lot of wealth from many generations. And in his head, he's above everybody. But imagine if remove all of that wealth and power from him. He's just a tiny little human being, and anybody can just defeat him. You know, he could just die. Then what? This person can see that the others don't. Nor in the hereafter that our ultimate return is to God, and that the transgressors have incurred the hellfire. So once again, the belief in the hereafter uh, is is what will take us to a good place in the hereafter, because we will live life accordingly. We will live a righteous life to have the permanent good place in the hereafter and not be consumed with the earthly material like Pharaoh. Verse 44, someday you will remember that I am telling what I am telling you now. I leave the judgment of this matter to God. God is the seer of all the people. God then protected him from their evil schemes, while the people of Pharaoh have incurred the worst retribution. So, pretty self explanatory these verses are. He talks about the hereafter and believes in one day he will be talking to people and will tell them, look, didn't I tell you? Remember that time when I was talking to you? So, his conviction, his certainty is so obvious from his words. God then protected him from the evil schemes. Obviously, God always protects the believers. That's his law. So this person had no fear and he spoke his mind, while the people of Pharaoh have incurred the worst retribution. Obviously, who believed in Pharaoh and who got scared of him, um, they totally wasted their lifespan, and they will be going to hell. Verse 46, and the subtitle is While in the Grave, a Continuous Nightmare. The hell will be shown to them day and night, and on the day of resurrection. Admit Pharaoh's people into the worst retribution. As they argue in hell, the followers will say to their leaders, "We used to be your followers. Can you spare us any part of this hell?" The leaders will say, "We're all in it together, in this together. God thus has judged among the people." So when the disbelievers will leave this world, even before the day of judgment, they will go into this state of sleep where they will be shown hell day and night until the day of resurrection, until we all get resurrected. Well, as we know, the believer don't even face death. Subhanallah. They continue their life in a different dimension, and they go straight to paradise. They don't taste the death. They don't feel it. They're just body. They leave their body, their actual soul, the actual human, the actual person leaves the body and leaves this dimension and goes escorted by angels and welcomed by angels nicely to paradise. But on the contrary, the disbelievers will, even before the day of judgment, for even like, let's say they're a couple of centuries from now, they will have nightmares, bad dreams, day and night about hell, before even they could enter the hell. That is so sad and that is so horrifying. And that's what God tells us about. That will happen to Pharaoh's people. The worst retribution is waiting for them. And God sent them to the messenger with so many proofs and they rejected it. That's how bad these people were. And that's how bad people were throughout the history when message came to them. God always sends proofs. That is one of the sign of a messenger or a prophet. They're always supported by a one proof or many proofs. So these people will argue in hell, and the followers will say to their leaders, imagine Pharaoh being their leader, and those people will ask him, so you said you were God, and now what? We used to be your followers. Well, can you spare us? Can you do something now? It's so painful. And the leaders will say, too bad. Look at me. I'm in this with you. God has judged. God once. Sorry. I had to. Um, Once again, my dog. I apologize for this interruption. So this is how helpless everybody will be. No leader can help their followers. The followers will be exactly on the same platform as the leaders were. So it's all, nobody will have any leverage over there or have any kind of power to do anything now. So much helplessness. Too late. Verse 49. Those in the hellfire will say to the guardians of hell, call upon your Lord to reduce the retribution for us. For even one day, they will say, did you not receive your messengers who delivered to you clear messages? They will reply, yes, we did. They will say, then implore as much as you wish. The imploring of the disbelievers is always in vain. This is really sad, it's too late. The eternity when evil dawn upon people, that they are in hell permanently, they will just constantly be struggling and begging to the guardians of hell that, can you please ask your Lord to reduce the retribution for us for even one day? Just imagine that sometimes we burn our finger or we get hurt, but we have a hope that this hurt will go away. After a few days, we're going to have pain, we're going to suffer, but it's not permanent. My goodness, these people will never have respite from that painful retribution. We have to be extra careful. We have to be very appreciative of God's message, which is going to save us from this. And then guardians of hell will say, well, why are you talking like this now? What happened? Did you not receive any messengers? Were you the people who God forgot about, or he never sent a messenger to you? No message came to you, no scripture? What happened to you? Why are you here then? And they will reply, yes, we did. They will admit that, yes, messengers did come to us. Or we received God's books, messages, scriptures. Then implore. They will say, you implore now as much as you can now. Why are you asking us? You did receive messengers. You know about God. Why are you saying, call upon your Lord? God is the most just God. He sent every community a messenger. Why would God leave certain communities and not? God has given everybody an equal chance. But God says the imploring of the disbelievers will be in vain, is always in vain. There's no use now. Even the disbelievers, when they implore God here, they implore and then they go back to their same old idol worshipping. So what's the point? Guaranteed victory here and forever. Verse 51. Most assuredly, we will give victory to our messengers and to those who believe, both in this world and on the day the witnesses are summoned. On that day, the apologies of the disbelievers will not benefit them. They have incurred condemnation, they have incurred the worst destiny. So, subhanAllah, it's not that we just wait all our life to be over and we see the happiness and guaranteed victory in the hereafter. But it starts from here. That's God's promise. And God says, most assuredly, we will give victory to our messengers and those who believe. So it will start from here. All we have to do is stay steadfast through good times and bad times, through hardship and through luxuries and everything. We never waver in our belief in God and in the hereafter and in God's promises. So both in this world and on the day the witnesses are summoned, and people will be witnesses to each other, to those. When we talk to other people about God, and rejection happens not only to messengers, and we also see that we're surrounded by people who do not believe in God or his revelations, and we face all kind of arguments. Most of the time people will be witnesses, they will serve as witnesses as well. So everybody receives a messenger and a message of God in their lifetime. On that day, the apologies of the disbelievers will not benefit them. So obviously it's too late. Why it is too late? Because they were given lifetime chance to grow their souls by worshiping God alone, denounce their idolatry, the original sin, ask for forgiveness, repent. And that's all. was asked from them, but they failed. People failed to, those who will end up in hell, they failed to grow their souls by giving the practices by God. So automatically, their soul will be so shrunk that we will not be able to stand God's immense energy on the day of judgment, and they will run towards hell on their own. So, what apologies will not benefit them. It's the final decision now. They were given this entire lifetime span and they chose. So, in another part of the Quran, God says, they will ask to go back to give another chance. God says, even if I send you back, you will commit the same crime again, because there is a barrier between this life and the other dimension. Um, and when we come back to this world, we cannot remember exactly the same way we do not remember our first life when we all used to live in God's kingdom. So it would be the same again, like we don't remember that time right now. So God says they have incurred condemnation, they have incurred the worst destiny. At this, God willing, I will end the recitation, and you can ask for if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Masha Allah, sister Nusrat, you did an awesome job.
Thank you, Pamela. Mashallah. Praise be to God.
So I believe Pamela has the first question because she wasn't available the last couple of sessions.
MashaAllah, very good explanation, Baji.
Thanks, Jazi. Mashallah.
So actually, I wanted to comment on the part where you mentioned about the ego.
Sorry, Solomon. I can barely hear you. Does
Okay,
everyone have problem hearing Solomon?
Yes.
okay,
We can't
Uh-huh.
hear
Solomon,
you.
please go
We
ahead.
cannot.
Okay, Solomon, can you please fix your audio? No, still cannot hear. Adam, what? Something wrong with the audio right now?
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to comment. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to comment on the aspect of ego and how these people, rejected these messengers. And I mean, we see from the Quran like a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of explanations about why these people reject. I mean, a lot of it is that you know the reason being that one, they it's hard for them to accept the messenger because they believe that why, it's because of jealousy basically. It's like, why did the message, like it says in the Quran, why did the message come down to him instead of us? And then the other places where we see about the people who disbelieve, they look at the other people who believe with the messenger, and then they say, well, if there was anything good in this, they would have been the first to believe it. But now because these other people have believed and they look down on these people, you know they don't want to accept the message, based on ego. And also, like we see with the case of, for example, Noah's people, it says, the worst among us have followed you. So basically, when uh, why should we believe, and the worst among us have followed you, right? The verses I'm referring to. So
Yes, yes.
right, so I mean, it's also like difficult. I mean, it all comes down to ego, at the end of the day. Well, and the thing is, for the human beings, we're here because of our egos. And if you're not able to subdue your ego in this world and accept the truth, based on that, I mean, it's, you're going to fall in Satan's trap at one point or another. Your ego is going to get tested in this manner. And it becomes very difficult for people because of that. I mean, we have had experiences, for example, where you present the truth to someone, and will tell them over and over what the truth is and explain to them all the proofs, but they will not accept the proofs because they look down upon you for some reason, you know. And then eventually, once, you know, they if God, you know, has mercy on them for whatever reason, you know, they later on, you know, they realize that they were wrong, and eventually they will accept it, you know, with hesitation. But you know, just because you are the first ones who have believed, you know, it becomes a difficult test for their egos to accept the truth. And you know, basically, so these kinds of tests, I mean, are put in place and are allowed by God for a very special, I mean, for a very specific reason, you know, because you know, this is why the test of messengership as an essential test, you know, this is why the messenger of the covenant had to announce his messengership, because, you know, accepting, because people had to overcome their natural ego and jealousy, you know, uh, and um, and that's why the messenger has to announce that, you know, if somebody is a real messenger of God, they announce that they are a messenger, and, you know, then the people are tested accordingly. So
Yeah, mashallah, so true. Those people become test for other people. Oh, but they used to be like this. How could how could they be the first ones? You know, that hurts people's egos. And those who looked like they were pious all their lives, um, and they were, you know, like had high positions, and these people, you know, so God, only God guides.
mhm.
We know that whatever reason, and people, those people become tests for other people, and it hurts their ego to even believe, you know. But yeah, you're right, mashallah. If people could, people have to really come over their natural hatred or bias towards those people in order to be, you know, kill their
Right.
ego and believe. Yeah.
And so yeah, there's another example, you know, we see from which is from Surah 2 verse 247, you know. Uh, it says, questioning God's wisdom, it says, their prophet sent to them, God has appointed Talut Saul to be your king. They said, how can he have kingship over us when we are more worthy of kingship than he? He's not even rich. He said, God has chosen him over you and blessed him with an abundance in knowledge and in body. God grants his kingship to whomever he wills. God is bounteous, omniscient. Um, so basically, you know, that verse, and then there was another verse I was looking for, which was Surah 43, verse 31. It says, Muhammad's ridiculed. Said, they said, if only this Quran was sent down through another man from the two communities, Mecca or Yathrib, who's prominent. You know, so it doesn't. So it's not the fact that this person is presenting to them the truth. It's not enough. But what matters is who is presenting to them. You know, I mean, it's easier for them to subdue their ego for people who are much higher in status, you know, social status, and, you know, are rich and whatever, you know, in society, you know. Uh, but you know, God makes these things a test for people by you know, not you know, sending a message in a way that, you know, it's like adorned from the outside for people. You know, I mean, he presents it in a way that, you know, it filters out those people who accept the message for those types of factors. You know, he makes it so you can just accept the message for what it is. I mean, so
Mm.
you know, I mean, a similar example is when God sent Moses, and, you know, he, you know, had him he had the message delivered through a person to Pharaoh with a huge ego, with a person who had a speech impediment, you know. And it was like, oh, why
Right.
should I accept the message from him? Somebody who can lowly speak, you know, who lowly and can hardly speak.
Yeah, barely speaks. That's right. Yeah, imagine, you know, that one has to be perfect, right? In his mind. And he had all the wealth, and obviously he was a prince himself and all that. People's expectation. They basically, it tells you like they're not listening to the truth. The other factors are really adorned in their eyes when their heart is in disbelief. The words of God are not reaching their ears.
Masha Allah, yeah. I mean, this is why, like the verse you read about, the first people to believe uh, are the ones who will get more credit because, it's harder for them. In the end, the people who follow afterwards, it's much easier for them, to jump on the bandwagon. When you know it's out there and prominent, and people are believing. Then everybody will jump on the bandwagon, but they will not get the same credit as the people who will be the first ones to believe and uphold the truth throughout.
Yeah, that's why God says, the in the higher heaven would be the more from people from the first generation, lesser from the second. Because it will become easier, and as you're saying, it would be easier for people to join the bandwagon, and the second generation already inherited. Um,
Yeah, go.
the,
Sorry, guys. Actually, just to add to what Salman was saying, I mean, Salman said people, but when we talk about people, we're also talking about our own siblings. They, especially if you're the youngest one, they saw you grow up and they saw all the naughtiness that you did, and so if you
yes,
if you offer them the message, they never see the person who you've become. They always think of who you were as a little child. And so when we say people, that includes our own sibling.
so true. So true, Masha Allah. Uh,
And
yeah,
another point I wanted to make is throughout the scriptures, you would see that when prophet and messengers come, the worst among the people followed them. And and in current time, and I would imagine when it says worst among them, it's what people think is the worst, meaning
Hmm.
poverty and
right, apparently.
destitute. Yeah, destitute in some ways. However, as currently in this world, and that includes me, do we offer the message to the people who's like that? Do we make that extra effort to offer the message?
It doesn't necessarily mean that those people were poor. It just means, I mean, they could be poor, very likely. I mean, mostly, people consider worse people those who are poor, but I mean, you could be rich too, but rich or relatively rich. But the thing is that they consider them the worst people. I mean, it doesn't have to be just based on money. For example, it could be based on character. Somebody could have a horrible lifestyle and could have made poor choices in life, for example. And they would have they won't be like, for example, a priest or a rabbi or something like that. They could be just average people who just weren't submitters, for example, and then they get the message and then they become submitters. So they could, and so people would judge them based on these things where, look at this person, this person did this and did that. I mean, in fact, they said the same about Moses too, like saying, you were with us and you killed someone and this and that. They taunt them through these things, so it helps them keep away from the path.
Yes, yes. So that's what I meant. I didn't mean just poor people who, in the eyes of the world, we generally look down upon. So character, poverty,
Hmm.
it could be a range of
Hmm.
things. Yes, it could be a range of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, exactly. I remember one time I was used to be in a place where some people took the initiative to spread the Qurans, and it was going to the prisons, and mostly the people in the prisons were you know poor people, obviously, or like criminals or whatnot, but people were really like unhappy, and not just unhappy, but they were like straight out disagreeing with the idea that you should give God's message to these people that are in the prisons, um, and for various, thoughts. I mean, of course, there's also some. Uh, I mean, racism is pretty big right now, but there's also some factors related to that as well. And then others were concerned about you know them being bad people, and which is just nonsense, really. I mean, when you there's other people, for example, who are trying to find um, you know people that are religious and are following God alone to try to give them the message, or there's other people that are just trying to find rich people and trying to give them the message, which is all wrong, really. I mean, we don't know, uh, who at what point, God will guide. Obviously, I mean, it's different if somebody's fighting with you and rejecting the message and stuff like that. But you can't just simply, like, for someone who has never been, you know, uh, exposed to the message, you can never really judge based on the outside, say, well, this person's poor and I'm going to give the message to someone who's rich, or this person is more righteous or looks more righteous, so I'm going to give it to them because that person is, doing all these crimes or has done these crimes and stuff like that. I mean, so we these this all kind of, to me, just shows that we can't, like, prejudge based on someone's past if this person's going to be a submitter or not. Also,
Yeah, mashallah. Actually, if anybody needs the message more than anybody, is people in prison.
Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, so good.
we all we're all we're all prisoners, so we all need the message
we
in
were
this world,
serving the time here.
Yeah.
we were we were barred from, we were put in this. But subhanallah, merciful Lord has given so much freedom in this to choose. But even though, like, we are here in this contained prison in a way that, this is not God's. This is compared to paradise, is what, yeah. But mashallah, so many people have converted from to submission from prisons, and yeah, it continues. The best place to actually, those people are desperate, down on themselves,
Mhm.
a lot of time in their hands to read,
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah. Actually, what I saw uh, in going to prisons. I went to prisons in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, and there were, although most of them were African American people who were originally from the Nation of Islam and knew very little about submission. Um, People were, I mean, it's just, I've never seen it anywhere else, but people over there were just always like dying, almost like you'd think that they were so thirsty, they're like dying to get a Quran, dying to, get literature about submission. And I've never, I mean, seen anybody so thirsty for the message, but and people so readily accepting of the truth. I mean, if you outside, if the prison, for example, if you go and talk to people about submission, they'll argue with you and stuff like that. Of course, there are people that will argue with you in the prisons as well, but not as much. There, most people, I mean, i I think I only went for a few months, and I was surprised to see that. I mean, there were some people that were going before me, but I was surprised to see when I went there. I mean, there was already a big community there, like 20, more than 20, like I would say like 40, 50 people at least that would come to the Quran studies, and several of them were really following submission. They were doing their contact prayers, and they were promoting it to other prisoners. And I was just always, every time I went there, I mean, it was really, I mean, it would really make me happy seeing how these people were, you know, just thirsty. Like, you know, you would give them, I mean, they would go like hot pancakes, you know.
Wow.
People would, yeah, exactly. And we would run every time we would go there, like, you know, we would run out of the Qurans because they would just all be taken and other people would be asking, you know. So yeah, anyways, just thought
Well,
share that.
how is the procedure to give Qurans here in the I don't know, in Canada? There you have to go
Mhm.
through so much, right?
It's not a lot. It's not a lot. Like, I think it's probably the same as in the U.S. I mean, basically, what you do is, you know, they have a process. If anybody wants, like, you know, in every prison, you know, they need chaplains. So you have Muslim chaplains, you have Christian
Mm-hmm.
chaplains, and different chaplains. So Jewish chaplains. Actually, when I went there, you know, a lot of times I would get mistaken for a rabbi. It's just funny. Anyway, which is funny because I didn't even have a beard or anything like that, you know. But yeah, so the process is like you go there and you apply, and then you have to fill out a form, and then after that they do a background check. It's just a very basic background check, and then they would call you in for like a orientation session where they would like give you information about like your safety and all of that, and then after that, you know, if everything goes well, then you know they let you go in, and you can take the Qurans with you, and you can even give them. You can even gather them. I don't know how the process is now because of the whole virus thing, but like usually, you know, they would allow them to gather from different units and sit in one place, and so you could have a large gathering of like 100 people or so easily inside one of the rooms, and then you can talk to them about your message, and then you can give them Qurans there too, or you can just walk through the prisons and just, you know, just basically talk to them while they're in their units, and you can talk to them and give them the Qurans from outside as well.
As far as Canada goes, right? There's an organization in Ottawa, and they distribute Quran throughout Canada. So about 3 or 6 months ago, no, about 4 months ago, they took about 25 Qurans from us. So that's one way of contacting agency and asking them, would you be able to give Qurans to the different prison system? And then they contact with you, and then they said how much they want, and then based on that, you give to them.
I see. But you can also give them to put in the
Mhm.
library of, or
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you want to give it to prisons, I mean, you should probably do it yourself, because you don't know if you give it to another organization that is not a submitter, for example, like you don't know what they will do, at least in the US. I mean, you don't know what they'll do if they're not submitters, you know, and they'll look at your Quran and like, oh, this is wrong. And, you know, a lot of times, like the traditional Muslims would find out, for example, that, you know, they're submitters, and then they would try to talk the police department of removing those Qurans and stuff like that, you know, and this has happened in the past. So I think the best thing is that you have their own Qurans and you take them in yourself, rather than depend on another organization to do it, you know.
For allowing us to attend. Just to back up what Pamela was saying earlier, that more poor people, like they were all more poor people, but just to see that, you know, like now we have like 1% of the rich people, filthy rich people, you can say, in our community. So rich and powerful and famous are a very minority. That's one factor. That's why you will see more average and poor people coming because it's just a base in math. They're more in population. And the other factor important is that the more money you have, the more famous you are, the more power you have, it will feed your ego, and it's a lot harder to cross the ego mountain for someone, or then compared to somebody who is poor and who really see the life as it is. It's much easier. So that's why money, power, rich, famous, all these things, as glamorous they look, but it's very scary because these things just takes you away from this life. So that's one of the factors that yes, people will come all sort of all part of life, but because of the math and ego, you will see more poor and average people than rich people. Just want to make that point. And also, this is God's system. When Moses went back to Pharaoh, God could have sent Moses to somewhere and have him go through some process where he would become a very powerful, even powerful than Pharaoh, and then he would come back very with forces and everything, like Solomon had, suppose, and then he would give the God's message, and then people will say, "Oh, Moses is much more powerful. We must listen to it." So that is the problem. That why are you taking the message? Is it for because what do you call? I mean, because of power, or because what the message is, what the proof somebody's bringing. And Moses was just an average person walking into the, Pharaoh's palace, and he has no power in it. But he has the proof. So you make the judgment on that. And similarly, I heard that the messenger of the covenant, people from Mecca and other people, the powerful people, they have all the organizations. That's what I heard. I don't know for a fact, but that they were jealous too, that why an average person from Egypt who just lives in a small city, Tucson, and has no knowledge, he doesn't even have a bear on his face, which they think is required, is telling himself as a messenger. So it was also part of the ego that why didn't the messenger come from their own community? If had God sent one of the messenger of the covenant through these people who was powerful and rich, then situation would have been much different. Similarly, when God ordered angels to prostrate or serve Adam, God made him a very lowly material. God is awesome, all powerful. He could have created Adam from something much more powerful, and then that objection would have been gone, and with Satan would be also prostrating, oh my God, he is much more powerful than me. But this is a test for us, that when we accept something, why do we accept it? The other day I was watching this Netflix series, Hoarding, and so they tell this person who's hoarding so much, and this person accepts their deal right away, and they're like shocked. I said, do you accept it? He said, yes. I said, but why? You offering someone something and they accept it right away, but then you're worried about why do you accept it right away? Didn't you have any objection or anything? So this why factor, I guess, is one of the most important. Thank you. Here's my comment.
Masha Allah. I also wanted to comment on verse 51. This is God's, the messenger of the covenant has clearly put a guaranteed victory here and forever. So this is a victory that is guaranteed by God for the messengers and for those who believe, both in this world and in the hereafter. So what does that mean? That God has guaranteed victory for the believers. Of course, the believers will be persecuted, and people will call them names and all kinds of things. They will make hurtful remarks, etc. But God promises victory. God promises happiness, perfect happiness for these people. Now and forever. So, I just saw this morning somebody had made a post somewhere on Facebook saying that the happiness in this world is not permanent, it's relative, and it's temporary, and then it's not continuous, and then a bunch of people had liked the post and then nobody had really opposed it. But really what God is telling us here is, says, you know, the victory is going to be here and forever. So it's not like, you know, you're just going to have it for a, you know, few days or something, and then you're going to have misery the rest of the year or two, and then, you know, another few days. But, you know, God says it'll be here and forever. So it will, it will be just like in heaven. I mean, of course, if you don't do anything wrong, you keep leading a righteous life, you know, your life will continue to get better and better. There's no reason for you to like lose your happiness over anything if you do righteousness. And God promises that, you know, if we believe in God and we put God first in everything, that eventually, you know, everything else will follow. You know, anything that we need, you know, our needs, everything will be met. Of course, we'll have to work to achieve those things, but, you know, a lot of people do work for things, but they are never happy and they don't get what they want. But the believers, you know, God says they will get their way, and God will see to it that, you know, they will be happy, and God will grant them, you know, their dearest wishes and answer their prayers.
Yeah, Masha Allah. This is God's promise over and over in the Quran, 23 places in straight words, but we see much more than in hidden words that God is telling us that. And it just, I don't know why it's so hard to people to accept that God is promising, you know, God wants good for us. He's promising heaven now and forever. And a lot of people can't grasp the fact that anybody dies before 40 also goes to heaven. This is God's mercy because this person didn't get enough time. So, you know, and then why you would get upset. I mean, I'm part of that group that, you know, which is that at any age you can ask for forgiveness, as we learned in the previous surah. Well, no matter how many sins they have, they repent and God will forgive them. So this mercy of dying before 40 or forgiving all your sins is open for anybody. I mean, why would somebody be jealous with this that anybody dies before 40? This thing actually is open for anyone. Basically, any age you can turn around and go worship God alone. This is God's mercy. And I mean, I don't know why people are so, you know, opposed to this fact that God is the most merciful, while the traditional Muslim, they promote God is most merciful. At the same time, they take all these qualities and put it on the side. This is not for you. Yeah, God is most merciful. You do whatever you want. He'll forgive you. But right now, suffer in this world. You know, mashallah, that's my point.
So I think, yeah, that's the one thing that I see that is, you know, not being promoted as it was being promoted at the time of the messenger of the covenant. You know, I mean, he brought the message. One of his duties was to proclaim the secret of perfect happiness, and you know, he was, you know, very enthusiastic and excited about this message, and always, you know, putting it forward that, you know, those who believe, you know, they have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. And not just in this life. I mean, he made a video from the King of Chaos, and, you know, I mean, a messenger of God presented this information to people based on Quran, you know, and this is God's promise. So if people, you know, if you really put your trust in God, and, you know, he will, and you believe in his promises, only then you will really be qualified as a person who believes in all of God's qualities. You know, I mean, God is the one who controls everything, so he's omnipotent, you know, so he's able to provide you the happiness that he has guaranteed. You know, if he's guaranteeing something and the messenger is saying it's guaranteed, I mean, you can't say that, no, well, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't get it, and you'll have this problem and that problem, and it's okay and stuff like that, you know. So this is God's guarantee, and we have to truly believe in this, not just even give lip service, but truly believe in this, and, you know, try hard. I mean, it's really, I think for us, our state of happiness is, you know, if you really check within yourself, a lot of times, you know, it will help you because a lot of times you'll even realize that you're not happy, for example, or you're something's bothering you, and then you find out like why it's bothering you. First of all, like, I mean, is it like a financial crisis or health crisis or something like that? I mean, that's different than you figure out what you did wrong, and fix those things, right? But let's say if there's things that are emotionally bothering you and you're unhappy, you got to figure out like why it's bothering you in the first place. And a lot of times you'll realize that the things that are bothering you, I mean, they shouldn't be bothering you because you're not looking at it in the right perspective of the Quran. I mean, whatever is happening, a lot of times we forget to realize, for example, that God is doing everything, and everything is in accordance with God's will. And if there's something that is making us so uncomfortable or so miserable, I mean, maybe it's because we're giving it too much power, or we're thinking that another person or another group of individuals, we're giving them power to think that they have the you know they have the power to do something, and we get upset and worked up, whether it's something that's happening to us or something that's happening outside in the world. I mean, we know that God is controlling everything, so that should really make us happy, like a lot. I think a lot of our problems will be resolved, and we will be a lot happier in life when we look at life this way, and understand that God is truly running everything. I mean, it's one thing to say it, but it's the message of the covenant, as he said, when you truly believe it, said the whole world will look different to you. And I think we can't truly appreciate it until we get to that point where the world actually starts looking different, like, and he gives an example where he's like, let's say, I think, if I'm not, I don't mean to misquote him, but I think it was something like, let's say there is like a big bomb explosion or something, he said, and everybody's dying, or earthquake or something. I forgot what it was, but some disaster he mentioned that's happening, and everybody's dying in Tucson, and you're smiling, here you are smiling, and that's the kind of example that he gave. So like, you could have disasters around you everywhere, but you would be smiling because you understand that God is running everything, and it's all part of God's plan, and everything is in accordance with God's will. And we as submitters, we submit cheerfully, so it shouldn't take away from our happiness no matter what is happening around us.
Exactly. MashaAllah. That is really, everything changes when you believe that, because even what Satan is doing is not out of God's control, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
He is not allowed even to, we know that all good comes from God, all bad comes from us, or Satan is the king of chaos. But imagine if everything, if he even had this power to change the outcome, he can't, right? God is running everything, no matter if people are scheming or doing wrong, it's still in accordance. The example is in the Quran, whether you chop a tree or leave it standing, you didn't decide it. It's God has already decided how long this tree will live. So it is going to be in accordance with God's will. When he, he said, it's the most important thing I'm telling you now. Your mantra from now on should be, God is running everything. God is running everything. So much you say to yourself all day long that you absolutely everything will change, because that is what who God is. Everything, even atoms are running, even the trees, the leaves are falling in accordance with His will. How much snow will fall? Those are big things. But even people think they're scheming and doing things. You know, it's not out of God's control. So, absolutely, God is running everything, whether it's war or famine or whatever is happening in the world. Still, nobody else has the power. Whatever is it, God has created a system and it goes according to that, and He's still, everything is predetermined, everything is controlled by God. And yeah, We just accept it.
Yeah, mashallah. One of the way to look at this beautifully is that God is doing everything. Is, I mean, somewhat gives you a like, you know, you think, what am I doing? You know, we have all these things that okay, I made that decision. What is my choice in this and that? So basically, God runs everything. I mean, you plant a seed and you give water, and did you grow it? All the from microscopic elements in the seed and all the evolving and everything, 99.9999% work that is being done to the plant and all the things that provided to the seed is coming from God. God is controlling everything. You just do a little bit. Basically, it comes down to you. God gives you an option. Uh, push option A or option B. You know, when you push A, that is you suppose submit to God, or B, submit to anybody other than God. You have the choice. When you push the God's button, automatically everything God is controlling and God will provide you in that path. The choice was yours, but everything is done by God. And if you choose B, that's your choice. Even though whatever Satan is doing, whatever the negative world is doing, all is done, controlled by God, but it will be providing you path leading to their direction. And that's pretty much comes down to, you know, like our body. You know, you get up, you walk, you know, we think that I was the one picked up the glass, or I was the one pushing those buttons, and I was the one who did the work. If you really do the math, you did basically nothing. You just, you know, if you can imagine the amount of work is being done inside your body to support our life is phenomenal. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to even think that if we one of our professor was telling us that if you just today, if it is assigned to you, you're going to control your pancreas, you will not even able to get out of your bed, because your pancreas alone is doing so much work that you will be just sitting controlling your blood sugar, this and that. You will not be able to focus in anything. So praise God that who does everything for us, and we just basically, you know, enjoy life. God, that's what God wants us to enjoy life. Don't, like, you know, say don't count the mangoes tree, just eat mango and enjoy. And like how they say, you know, mashallah. That's my point.
Yeah, mashallah. The difference would be you gave the example of you plant a seed, right? And whether it's vegetables or flowers or trees, a Samira will say, you know, I'm just going to plant the seed and God is the one, whether he wants to grow it or not, and how tall and how fruitful or whatever. And a non-Samira will say, I did it, right? He think he will take all the credit. So that's the difference. The God is the one who's running everything, and we just put our effort, and we get the credit or discredit of our whatever the things we decide to do, you know. But it's in accordance. God will guide you that way, whatever way you choose, and that is the outcome written is according to those choices, right? So, but still, for example, if God doesn't want something, you know, a person is not supposed to get hurt. Um, like sometimes you see, watch those videos where you see like a person just moved and the car just crashed into right by him, you know, could have gotten hurt, or people who survived. Now the plane crash happened in Pakistan. 2 people survived, right? Because they were not supposed to die in that plane crash, and they still have to live with the trauma of whatever that is. People who would board on that plane, people who decided not to board on that plane or decided not to go that day, all in accordance with God's will. Like, it's so just, people say, oh, you were lucky, you didn't. No, there's no luck. It's already been recorded. Everything has been recorded. Everything has already happened at God's. Exactly. Imagine if every action had its own outcome without God's permission. There would be chaos, a different kind of chaos. The results are already, end results are by God decided how the outcome will be. Like, if you're walking and you're not supposed to get hurt that day or fall, even something comes in front of you, the angels will kind of remove it. It's not supposed to happen. It's a concept that, only submitters know, I guess, or believers.
Yeah, mashallah. Have you seen the movie Final Destination, where these teenagers are getting on board, and one of the teenager sees a dream, or it's like a flashback or something, that the plane crashes. He gets up and then he starts warning everybody, "Come on, this is gonna crash, everybody!" And he's just screaming. And so maybe a couple of people was able to, they disembark him, and then maybe two more people or something. And it does happen. The plane crash, and the Pakistan flight that crashed, had these people knew before they got on board that this plane is going to crash, nobody would have got on board. Nobody. And they would have checked the plane and everything. I mean, had they knew this information. Similarly, if people can see the day of judgment, exactly this, like this plane that we are on, this earth, that's basically a planet. You can call it a plane. It's going to go crash. And God tells us exactly this plane is going to crash. And when God's come to this world, and then the day of judgment will be presented, and if people can see all that, just like the people can see this plane is going to crash and this was going to happen, they won't get on board, and they will change their life. They will change their life immediately. Okay, oh my God, I need to submit to God. I need to change my life, not today, right this second. And so basically, God is giving that information to us. If you can go to that airport where these people are getting on board and tell them, don't get on this plane, and you tell them this is going to happen, even without any proof, most people will not get on board. And here, God is telling you the plane you're on board is about to crash. You got to change your life. And God is giving us that information. I mean, this is one of the mercy of God, that He's giving us that information. People would be like, is saying that, oh my God, if God had given us some information, we would have been different. Yeah, like other examples, like if you start a business and when you lose that business, and you find out somehow that this is the mistake you did, and what do you think? The first thing you think, oh my God, had I knew this in the beginning, I would have changed my life. How many times we have the guilt inside, that regret in ourselves, that had I knew, I would have changed my life. That had I knew part, God is telling us right now. So we don't regret on the day of judgment. So nobody will have excuse on the day of judgment. So, and this valuable, the most important valuable information God is giving us through this book, and all we need to just follow it. Mashallah. Thank you.
Yeah, mashallah, God is telling us in advance future happenings, right? God is telling us that this is exactly, people will talk in the hell. People, what will people be feeling in the heaven? What would be after death? Everything in advance, future. God is telling us exactly, and we still want to make the choice to not follow that. The most truthful, the absolute truth. God is the absolute, comes with absolute truth. And we still have doubts about the hereafter, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
like there's
The plane, that this is something is going to crash into disaster, but you don't want to believe that. And, it might not happen. Who knows? Belief in the hereafter is the game changer here, you know.
So I thought there were a lot more people in the study when we started. Let's see.
Yeah.
Some
We're
people
here,
left.
we're here, we're listening.
Also, no, you're here. There were other people that left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People got, I guess, some people have to do chores and stuff. I know one person, Kazi is still at work. Still at
Right.
work.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. I mean,
I do have a question, actually.
Okay.
You know, it's repeatedly you see messengers and prophets like the worst among them forward. And the worst among them is in the eyes of the world, who the world thinks is the worst among them. So, say for example, you know, you give someone the message who is homeless on the street, and they ask you, so where can I meet? You know, meet this set of believers who believe this way, and there's no masjid. So, what do you do?
Well, I mean, he can meet them in paradise if he is righteous. No,
No,
anyways,
actually,
no, I understand your question.
the question
Well, I
meant
mean,
to be.
you know, you could you could give them the address of a website and say, you know, or Facebook, or say you can join, you know. Uh, I mean, nowadays even homeless people have phones. Actually, they give phones to every homeless person. Not every homeless person, but like every person who cannot afford, at least in the U.S. I don't know, not sure about Canada, but any person, you know, who gets like food stamps and stuff like that, they give them a phone, and it has internet. So you know they can go to the website and connect to other submitters on social media and stuff like that.
What was the question?
The
Sorry,
question was that
I
if there's a homeless person, you know,
mm-hmm.
and you give them the message, and the homeless person says, "Where can I find your submitters?"
Oh, I see.
What would you say to them? You know,
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's no masjid around. There's no
right?
neutral place,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
a space that you
yeah.
bring.
In the past, you know, like I would just give people the Quran, and I would tell them, you know, for any question, go to the website, and if then, you know, if they have other questions or whatever, you know, they can just send you an email. So you give them an email address, and then they can write to you.
Um, the too bad that Quran prices are so high these days. I was thinking, you know, like I want to go and check on libraries, but these days libraries are not even open.
What?
Right.
How much? I think it was 11 something.
The kind of deal you got, Salman?
Yeah, yeah. We can talk about it offline,
Yeah, yeah.
I guess. God willing.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess anybody else has any other questions?
Masha Allah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Masha Allah.
Thanks, Masha Allah. Okay, Assalamu Alaikum, everyone.
Okay, so if nobody has any questions, I guess we could end our YouTube session also. We only have 2 people on YouTube anyways. um Today. So thank you all for joining us. Our next session, God willing, will be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and our teacher is going to be I think Adam Ali.
You.
Yeah, inshallah.
Is it Adam or Salman?
No, it's Ali,
Oh,
not
yeah.
Adam.
Adam.
It's not Adam. It's or me. It's Ali.
Okay. Is Huda wants to do it or no? She's okay.
Huda, do you want to do it on Saturday? Uh,
Yeah, I'll be more than happy. I
okay,
just want to give her the
okay,
option that because she hasn't done it. So,
okay.
but inshallah,
I'll let you know if she wants to
yeah,
do it. But otherwise, you
anything.
know,
Yeah,
probably
inshallah, inshallah.
gonna be God willing. Yeah.
Okay, praise be to
All right,
God,
then.
God
Thank you
for
all.
the
God bless
opportunity.
you.
Assalamu
Assalamu
Alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.